Hi everyone, I'm Miguel Rivera, and this is Real Talk with Miguel Rivera. You're listening to Real Talk with Miguel Rivera, a podcast that inspires individuals to connect, build community, and pursue their passion. My name is Miguel Rivera, and I'm an educator, community advocate, and executive director of Dream Big Project. And I'm sitting down with passionate and inspiring individuals to talk about their stories, the lessons they've learned, and how they're making an impact.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, humans of all ages, I am your host, Miguel Rivera. Joining us today is a very special guest, Jenna Hardy-Surina. Jenna is a therapist who helps people who had their life flipped upside down by a diagnosis, injury, or disability, and are struggling with hopelessness, find themselves again by rewriting a bigger and better story for the next chapter of their life. Jenna, welcome to the podcast. Excited to have you on today. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
No, of course. I think, for quite some time, we've been talking about this and had a couple conversations.
Yep.
And so finally we've made it to the day and we can basically begin this show, right?
Yep. I'm excited. Let's hop to it. Well, and I want to point out, thank you for wearing the appropriate attire today.
Of course.
If you would have walked in with an Angels jersey, I might have had to leave and reschedule.
I probably would have done the same if you walked in with an Angels jersey. I'd probably say, you got to go. You have to change. I got a Dodger jersey for you. But no, I'm a huge Dodger fan. I think my entire family is, and sounds like you are as well.
Yes, absolutely.
So the Dodgers are currently playing the Red Sox right now, I think. Hopefully this is our year.
Yeah.
Right?
We say that every year.
Every year. And last year, I think it was the year we had a franchise record in wins. And then we got eliminated the first round by the Padres.
Classic.
It was terrible. It was terrible because I remember watching those games and then, we lost one at home and then we went to San Diego and then we were up, and I always go back to this. I hate going back to this, but we were up like 5-1 or 5-0 in one game. And then we brought in our pitcher and we blew the lead and we lost.
But it's kind of the story of being a Dodger fan and this season of the team. I feel like at least, and I'm not really good at facts and stats and stuff like that, but I feel like at least for the past 5 years, if not 10, we've been living with this dilemma.
Yes, exactly. We did win that year where it was, I think people refer to as COVID year.
Yes.
Right? And they're like, that doesn't count, and I'm like, man, that counts. But
give us something.
Yeah. Well, you're right, though. We've had great teams. So we've had, we've been winning the division or the league. And then it's like we have all-star caliber teams, and then we kind of can't compete.
We can't follow all the way through.
No. So that's definitely riding with us every year. So, but compared to Angel fans, I still brag on that. So
we might have lost a few listeners.
Right. They tuned out right away.
Yeah.
Speaking of Angel fans, though, Ohtani, he's the big baseball player. Ohtani, who just got hurt. For those listening who are baseball fans in general, next year he's supposed to be the largest addition to any team. So Ohtani with the Dodgers. For those of you who don't know, one of the best pitchers, and one of the greatest hitters in baseball right now. He does a little bit of everything. So a lot of conversation was him coming to the Dodgers next year, but he recently got hurt and is out for the year and Tommy John surgery. Oh. So it's all right, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, I think this is part of the greater love of being a sports fan, right? Is the drama and behind the scenes, and, so it's kind of watching like a telenovela.
Exactly. If you're a sports fan, that's pretty much your life right there. Up and down, especially if you're watching multiple sports year round. Right?
Yep.
But I'm excited for baseball season, postseason baseball. A little bit earlier, we're talking about just kind of your family history, your husband involvement in baseball. So that's pretty cool.
Yep.
But I would like to transition into kind of your background. I would like to start with that because I'm interested in learning more about that and sharing that with our listeners and viewers. Now, I met you.
Yeah.
At the Perfect Step, what used to be Project Walk.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And Pomona, or no, not at the time. At the time it was
in Claremont.
Claremont.
Yep.
Now it's in Pomona, but it all started in Claremont.
Yes.
Right? And that's where I first met you.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
And can you talk a little about your experience there?
Yep.
You know, how that all came about?
Right.
Yeah. Would you mind talking about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Project Walk, which is, for people who don't know, a paralysis recovery center. So the whole premise is that we use, it's not traditional physical therapy. It's exercise-based therapy to help kind of heal, and not completely, but help the bodies of people living with different neurological disabilities and their process through exercise, or these different methods that were invented through Project Walk. And I started at Project Walk when it was the only location, the original mothership was down in Carlsbad, California. Okay. And at the time, I was living in San Diego. I just graduated from college with my exercise physiology degree. I was working for Motorola, and I was helping run their wellness center there for all their employees. But then while I was in college, a good family friend, Hal Hargrave, got in a rollover car accident, became a quadriplegic the summer before his freshman year of college. Wow. And so, you know, kind of my trajectory and this is when he started researching, where can I go and get, you know, therapy that will help me with my body. Right. Now that physical therapy, you know, grants you maybe 6 weeks of therapy, and then it's like, good luck to you.
Exactly.
And so he found Project Walk, which was in Carlsbad. And then I found out about Project Walk because he was going there. And so then I got my first job there. I was an aide or an assistant to the specialist there. And then little Hal opened up the first Project Walk franchise in our hometown of Claremont, California. And then I followed him up to help him start opening the first franchise, of which was Project Walk, but now is the Perfect Step. I know there's a lot, it's very confusing. Just stick with us here. Yeah. And so I was at the Perfect Step for, maybe a little under a decade, 7 years, something like that. And through my time of working hands-on with people living with different neurological disabilities, so that's somebody who mostly spinal cord injury, but that could be a stroke, that could be multiple sclerosis or ALS. You know, we spent so much hands-on hours with them that we really started to get to know our clients personally, and the type of therapy we do. It's so hands-on. It's very personal. Right, so you quickly develop a very close relationship with your clients. Right. And a lot of, you know, we used to joke that kind of part of our job was being a therapist as well. And so as I went on, I was just hearing these stories and these things, and it just really made me go, you know what? I think the next move for me to really help aid this community would be to go back to school, switch careers, and go down the psychology route. And so I did, and I started school in 2016, went to get my master's in clinical psychology. Nice. And then starting 2017, 2018 is when I started seeing clients. And now today I'm in private practice, and the majority of my practice are people who, like you said in my intro, have some sort of physical disability or just like a tragic diagnosis that's kind of altered the quality of life for them. Wow.
That's very, very interesting. And at the same time, it's kind of like you've been working with, through Project Walk, the Perfect Step, a specific population where you recognize like a need, or you've seen a lot, and that basically inspired you or allowed you to go in a different direction and help in a different way besides being the specialist in the facility.
Yeah. Well, I think there was a couple clients that really, I think, were kind of game changers for me in the sense of that inspired me to move in that direction. One was actually Dave Steckline, who I gave you the Dave Steckline Award.
Oh my God.
Yes. I don't know if everybody knows, but you're in the presence of Miguel Rivera, the Dave Steckline Award.
Nobody knows. Nobody knows. I'm low key with that. I understand.
But Dave, who has, tragically passed, he and I had a really great relationship and so many great conversations. And he was just one of the many that I felt like, although I love the hands-on work that I did, I felt like as a specialist, one of my strengths was like the emotional component.
Oh, okay.
The pep talking of my clients, cheering them on, getting them out of those negative headspaces.
Very important piece of recovery.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I still have that award. I have that award in my office at school, actually.
Do you?
Yeah, I have it presented right there.
That's awesome.
A lot of people are like, what is that? And I tell them all about it.
Yeah.
So I still have that, definitely pushing that out there.
Yep.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So now you have your own practice.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
You're still involved to some extent with the Perfect Step, which is Project Wall, but now known as the Perfect Step. So we're going to need
a map here.
Yeah, when you hear the Perfect Step, that's used to be Project Walk, but it's now the Perfect Step.
Yeah. And I'm also let's just really make this really fun for everybody. Yeah. Right. So the Be Perfect Foundation, who is also run by the Hargrave family and sponsors people living with paralysis and their ability to get a wheelchair or to be able to afford therapy. I'm a board member with them. And so I've been putting on their fundraising events for years. So yeah, I absolutely still kind of have my hands in. But yes, I am majority of my time in my therapy practice.
Right. Mm-hmm. Can we talk about your practice?
Yeah, let's do it.
I feel like we're going to go all over the place today, but
I'm here for it.
But I'm interested in talking about your practice. Obviously, the population of people that you work with, disabilities, diagnoses, injuries, a little bit of everything. Very interesting, fascinating. So number one, you provide therapy.
Yes.
Right.
Psychotherapy. If we want to be specific.
Exactly. Let's be specific. We provide psychotherapy to clients, right, who are living who are experiencing different life situations, who basically are experiencing new changes in their lives.
Right.
A lot of them are in different positions. But I like to talk about, with that in mind, just kind of therapy as like the stigma tied to therapy to begin with. Not only that, but also that specific population. I'm okay with talking about it from my perspective, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm part of that community. But also at the same time, us within that disability community sometimes are resistant to reaching out for help or therapy or what culture we identify with. And that's also kind of taboo. Yeah. So it's like very interesting space that you're in.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, I'd like to kind of just get your input from any angle on that, if you don't mind.
Well, I think we both should share our experiences here, but I'll start with, first I want to make a disclaimer. I want to be very clear that I am not speaking for the community, and I'm speaking about the paralysis community specifically, that I have a lot of experience with them, but I'm speaking up for them. So I want to share that the insight or the things that I'm saying today are not because of my, able-bodied, expertise, but I just have a lot of hands-on hours. So a lot of the things that I'm saying are just kind of from the collective of what I've heard the community talk about. So I want to start off with that I'm not the representative for the community. So I think at least in the very small niche that I work in, the thing that the stigma of mental health that maybe prevents people from getting into mental health right away after they've, just all of a sudden one day woke up and they have a spinal cord injury, or they've been diagnosed with MS, or they've been diagnosed with a really rare disease. And now this is changing basically their quality of life is that, when you get diagnosed, most of the time people don't even know what a spinal cord injury is.
Yeah. Right? Lots of the time. Right.
And so what do? Well, we go to Google. In Google, so when you type in spinal cord injury, Google pops up or populates most of the time these, and pardon my French, inspiration porn stories about, they were in a motorcycling accident and then, 3 weeks later we're up and walking again. Right. So then we start what I call the walking fever. And I want to be clear that there's nothing wrong with pursuing rehab to the fullest. But what inadvertently ends up happening is that people go, I can walk again.
Right.
So they completely skip the grieving phase, which is your life has totally been shaken up. It's like things that you didn't even know could exist with the spinal cord injury are happening to you.
You literally have to learn how to live all over again.
All over again. And so, so in my specific niche of the world, I feel like the mental health stigma is more about kind of the delay that happens, that people don't think to seek therapy right away because they're looking to how to cure this immediately.
Okay.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And so, but everybody does at some point either find once again, I'd love to hear your perspective of the journey, either find inspiration in other places that allows them to have good mental health, to go to places like the Perfect Step, where there's such a promotion of independence and positivity around their bodies and recovery, that isn't so walk focused, that then they find a lot of hope and inspiration there. So they don't need to go to therapy, or they end up showing up in my office 3 to 5 years post-injury.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, was that your experience?
I'm glad you brought that up, because there were like 2 things that came up. And I hope I can remember both of them. The first one, the walking fever.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's, I think, right away, it's like what we want to get back to. We saying a newly injured individual with a spinal cord injury who no longer can walk.
Right.
And was told that they would never walk. Right. So right away, it's like, I want to get back to that, and you see it and you believe it.
Yep.
And then you're like super depressed because it's not quite that easy or simple to just process and get to that road to recovery. So then it gets to a point where you're doing things and you're kind of overcome that part where you're like comfortable going back out in society and living that regular, ordinary life that aligned with who you are. But then you get people who are like, for example, like you're going to, one day you're going to walk again. You're going to therapy. You already can do this. Like now you're going to get to walking or whatever the case is. And it's like, for me now, it's like, that's not the priority. That's not the end goal. Like the goal is to live an independent life, a quality of life, a fulfilling life, whatever that looks like for, it's different for everyone because we have our different experiences. Right. But, it's like, and I just noticed this, nothing against able-bodied people. I think it's
offense taken.
Right. That's kind of like the first thing that comes up.
Yeah.
Like, all right, can you walk again? Oh, like one day you're going to come in here running or whatever.
Right.
And it's like, that's cool. But I mean, you're kind of missing the point. Like you're not really, you know what I mean? So that's just to clarify for a lot of us. And I don't want to speak for everyone either, but, walking isn't always like the goal. Yeah. It's not always the goal. So, it's really about like quality of life, independence.
Yep. Absolutely.
Being able to do normal, regular day-to-day things.
Right.
With the least possible support or just, that's kind of an example of like the outlook.
Right. Well, I think you're talking about kind of a bigger, it's like once you, and I'm speaking for the paralysis community, once you get injured, right? Because you go literally from able-bodied, never even knew what a spinal cord injury is, to overnight, a wheelchair is now your legs. And now there are other things that you're having to deal with on top of not walking. Because a lot of people think you just can't walk. It's like, no, there's a whole other kit and caboodle going on. Right.
Yes.
But it's our perspective of, what is a quality of life? And so the ableist perspective is that this is a quality of life. And anybody who does not share this has a lesser quality of life. And we're taught that because think about, I want to say 100% of the time I have this conversation. It's one of the first questions I'll ask my new clients with disabilities or acquired a new disability. I'll ask, before you became disabled, what was your perspective of people in wheelchairs? Or what was your perspective of a disability?
Right.
And it's not rocket science. Most of the time, it's not really great. It's like, oh, I feel sorry for that person, or gosh, I go, thank God that's not me, or whatever. And so you carry those societal stigmas with you. And then all of a sudden now you yourself is a part of this population, and they're going, oh, there's no hope for me. My quality of life, period, is now always going to be lesser than. And, once again, this is part of the therapy process. It's like, yeah, well, no, not really, because you can actually, and that's really, that's the slogan to my business is that you are capable of living a big, full life, even with physical limitations.
Right. Absolutely. There's so much out there. And it's like going back to that beginning part too, it's like when you're newly injured, you acquire this new disability, right? This disability. It's like that beginning stage where it's like, well, my life is over, right? I can no longer do this. I don't really know what life looks like, so you automatically, I don't want to say automatically, but for me, that beginning stage was very challenging, very difficult, very dark in the sense of like, depressed. My life is over. I can't do all these different things. Right. And then, so that was like my mindset for actually a couple of years, and 2 years or a year and a half in the beginning. Right. So you're kind of stuck in this state of mind where you believe like there's nothing out there for me. Yep. Right. Yep. And then everyone's different. For me though, what really allowed me to get out of that was a couple of things. Number one, I had a neighbor who was a comedian, right? He came by, and he was actually a comic, like traveling. Yeah. And he came by and he would talk to me about like his story, where he grew up and how he got shot and all these different experiences, right? Yeah. So I related to that, connected there. And at the same time, he's like, what saved me is like comedy. Oh, yeah, laughter. Yeah, laughter. That uplifts your spirit. Yeah. That will enhance a lot of things. Yep. So he invited me out to a show to meet to see him, but also to meet, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the comedian Joe Coy. Yes. Joe Coy. So he introduced me to Joe Coy. Dang. He actually got Joe Coy to call me on my birthday. It was random. I had this random phone number called me, and I answered it. And then he was like, what's up? He was like, what's up, Miguel? It's your boy Joe Coy. And I was like, who is that? It's like yelling on the phone, And it was actual Joe Coy. Dang. So that kind of really did uplift my spirit, right? Yeah. The whole comic humor side, that does have an effect. Yeah. So that was like a beginning piece for me. Yeah. To like, okay, like, what do I want to do? Right. And then one thing I remember, I was like laying down and I asked myself, like, because I reflected a lot. Like I'm just that person who's just going to reflect and what can I improve on? What I've always, prior to my injury, I was an athlete, very social, outgoing, value, family oriented, all these awesome things. But then I was all gone. But naturally, over time, I would ask myself, like, this is like during that 2 years, I would ask myself, like, is this kind of the life I want to live? Because I was just at home all day. I wouldn't leave home. Yep. I wouldn't, just going. I was afraid to get in cars because I was in a car accident. Like, I just would not, pursue moving. I wouldn't move forward with my life. And I asked myself, is this like how you want to live? Like I was 18, 19 years old, 20. And the answer right away was like, no, So the next question is, so what are you going to do? Well,
I like that question because you said no, and a lot of people would have just ended it there.
Right.
No, I don't. And this is where we start to talk about mental health things like suicide or suicide ideation. But you followed through with the action, which is, what am I going to do about this?
Exactly. So that's the next step. Like, what am I going to do?
And this.
Right. And then it's like one thing leads to another. Yeah. Right. And even back then when I first was starting, it was more of like the simplest things like, how am I going to get here? Or when I get here, how am I going to navigate this space? Or what do the restrooms look like? Yep. Is it accessible for wheelchair users? Yeah. Will people know will people automatically know? Right. And people won't. Yep. And so it was so that was the beginning. And then the next thing that happened, and I'm just kind of talking about the beginning of my injury. Yes. And how the
first couple of years.
Exactly. Yep. Because that's that was a whole process within itself.
Absolutely.
And for me, it was very key because a lot of things happened or didn't happen. So the next thing that happened was my younger brother, Ivan, shout out to my bro. He invited me. He was a part of ASB in high school.
Oh, okay.
We graduated from the same high school. He was about 2 years younger than me.
Okay.
2 years. I'm 09. He was like 11 or 12 or whatever.
Babies.
Yeah, little babies. So he invited me. They were putting on an event that was an event for every 15 minutes. I'm not sure if you heard about that.
Yeah, we had those in high school.
Yeah, so they were putting that on. He was like, hey, they're looking for a guest speaker, and your story aligns with this event. And at the time, I was just, I've always been that person that I can communicate and socialize, but I really don't like to do presentations.
Yeah.
Right. I kind of grown into that.
Right.
But in this particular moment, when he asked me, I was like, right away, I'm like, no, I don't. But there was something inside of me that was like, you need to do this. You have to do it. You should do this. And that was speaking much louder than everything else. So I was like, I told him, like, yeah, like I'll do it.
Yeah.
So that was like, after that presentation in front of the school and all teachers, and it was a really large event. I got a lot of good feedback from that. Like your story is, like people need to hear your story. Thank you for sharing all that stuff that happened. And then that was enough for me to be like, oh,
I can make an impact.
Yeah, like I can do this. And they're right, like they kind of just reaffirm like what I've already thought. And okay, let me, so I started speaking a little more throughout the community and got invited to speak local areas and churches and organizations. And as I was doing that, I was like, okay, I'm doing this, that led from one thing to another, going back to school, community college. That was another piece too. Like, how am I going to get to this? Figure it out, tried things, did things, ask for help. So that, one thing leads to another. And I think that's key for us to put ourselves in those uncomfortable situations. Disability or not, we have to be okay with getting uncomfortable.
Yeah, well, we're talking about vulnerability.
Right.
And well, one, thank God for that little voice in your head, because I have to tell you, I reference you as an example to my clients who have a similar injury level as you all the time, because there's a lot of, especially when you're first injured, you're in the hospital, they're telling you, look, this is a massive grief process. Your whole life that you knew and what it looked like is gone, right? And so that's, once again, the why the grief process after an injury is so significant, because a lot of people miss that part. And it's an interesting grieving process because you haven't actually like lost a loved one, but you've lost a part of your identity, a part of yourself. And so it's so important to be able to address that. But I have so many clients who are like, I can't drive a car. And I'm like, yes, you can. And they're like, no, I can't. Look at my hands. Like, look at my hands. Like, who would let me get on the road? I would kill somebody. And I'm like, yes, you can't. Like, I'm telling you right now, call Miguel, call Hal Hardgrave, call whoever you need to do. But let me tell you the 50 different ways in which you can drive a car, right? But people just don't, once again, the lack of exposure to disability and all these things. So I know you didn't sign up to be the spokesperson or a role model for people in this way, but I'm so glad you had the little voice that you did, because everything that you're doing, the Dream Big project, being a school counselor, going back to school, and now you're on campus being a school counselor. And I would love to hear maybe eventually in our conversation about what's that like for you as a school counselor or whatnot. But you are setting this, you are continuing to set the stage for what is possible so that disabilities don't have to be, a death sentence for people.
Yes, exactly. And, I feel like, kind of touching on that, just disabilities and, cause right away it's like very obviously life changing.
Absolutely.
And then you go through this process, disability community, people are not very represented in certain field on TV, you know, in public, you go places, and then you kind of go somewhere and they're not very accessible, like physically, for people to enter certain, because I've experienced that and I was like, wow, okay, didn't go there. So it's very dehumanizing in a way. Like you don't really feel a part of the community. You know, so that's discourages us from going places.
Leaving the house.
You know, it's hard for me to get in a car. Well, I'm not going to go in any cars, you know, or like I can't drive. Or, you know, you start believing these things. You start believing that's it, you know, and it's not it. So it does take, you do have to be resilient. Right. You do got to face your fears. You do got to go through that. You get uncomfortable, you know, the vulnerability piece. So, and I think a lot of people struggle with that. So for me, I've always, you know, I've learned as I was going to school, like, you know, learning about multiple identities that we hold within ourselves and talking about like intersectionality and like different forms of oppression and how certain groups of people are more oppressed than others. And it's been like that for the longest. And you learn about the history of it. So, you know, going into that, and as I got more comfortable in my own skin and put myself more out there, I started seeing how underrepresented people are, you know, just in general. And then that means a lot to me because a lot of people would see me, and I'm just talking about myself. And, you know, there's vibes and, you know, things that I hear that are like, oh, they don't really expect a lot from me, you know, like they don't really think, you know,
I'm not capable.
They don't know who I am. You know? They don't know what I'm willing and capable of doing. Until I show them, they're like, oh, what? Like you do, you know? And I'm like, well, you know, like, so it's like proving people wrong. You know, and so I'm big on representation. I'm big on doing things, proving people wrong. I'm big on putting myself out there. Like I'm willing to be the example. You know what I mean? And I don't have a problem doing that. So I think having that mindset, having that just day-to-day mentality, that's allowed me to continue to do what I'm doing today and get to where I am. Today,
well, thank goodness for it, because you, Hal Hargrave, you know, I can name a whole big fat list of people are really kind of setting the stage for the new standard of how we see people with different physical limitations. And I apologize because I'm so bad with names and all the things, but I think her Instagram handle's called Disability Barbie. She's she is in a wheelchair herself, but she's also a disability rights activist and a journalist. But I heard her saying, I thought it was the best like thing to like highlight this community, which is, she goes, the disability community is the only minority community that anybody of any race, color, shape, size that could enter into this community at any point in time in their lifetime.
Wow.
You're not born into a minority community with some people are born with disabilities, right? But like I could leave today, get in a car accident and immediately become a part of the community. And I think that's the kind of shocking part about why we're so behind in society with accessibility and whatnot, because disabilities have been around since humans have been on planet Earth. So why is it, and I make this point a lot, why is it and that we know more about modern cancer research? Like everybody, you could talk to anybody on the street about breast cancer and like chemotherapy. Like the modern public understands that. They're like, oh, chemotherapy, that treats cancer. But people know nothing about spinal cord injuries or disabilities. It's astounding because really, every single day somebody is acquiring a spinal cord injury, and once again, we are all subject to it.
Exactly.
Also, it's not genetic. It's not like we all can enter into the community. So why aren't we taking a little bit more of a bigger precedent and trying to make a world that doesn't have it, like, once again, your life doesn't have to be over. And speaking to, I totally get why people initially in the beginning of their injuries are so hesitant to put themselves out there, because society literally is reflecting back to you. We actually don't really care about you. We don't care that you enter into these buildings or not. I mean, gosh, what, ADA only happened in the 90s? I think. July 20 something. Anyways, but it's like, it took the 90s, really? Like, this is when we first figured out, we probably should let people get into bathrooms and buildings. Like, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, very crazy. I like to, on your social media, I like to reference something that you shared, if we can pull that up. And it's actually exactly what you were talking about. Let me see. It was, go down a little bit, go down. Wait, right there. Hold it right there. That one. Yeah, that one. So this post, kind of exactly what you mentioned. Disabilities have been around since the first humans on this planet, right? Why does the general public know more about modern cancer treatments and accessibility?
Yeah.
Exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Right? So like since when humans were around, like the beginning of time,
yes,
disabilities have been around.
Yeah.
Right. And we're in 2023.
Right.
And we know more about modern cancer treatments than accessibility.
Well, and shout out to Susan B. Komen, who really, I mean, everybody knows the Susan B. Komen name. I mean, she really has been a champion for breast cancer awareness. And I think she was really the person who brought the larger community into awareness about cancer and cancer treatments and made people more familiar with chemotherapy or breast cancer and those causes, right? And you think about breast cancer, it's one of the biggest funded causes out there. So there's nothing wrong. I'm not knocking cancer treatments or Susan B. Komen, you know what I mean? But it is a little bizarre that, once again, we are all subject to this issue. And why aren't we taking, I don't know. I just don't understand it. It makes no sense to me.
No, it doesn't. I agree. I agree. And even like when it comes to like the economy and disability, right?
Yeah.
How expensive it is to live with a disability, right? And that, I mean, that's a whole industry and field and conversation, but it's very expensive.
Yeah.
Right. And then it's like, for example, I'll give an example. Like a simple one too that people can relate to. Going to a baseball game.
Oh boy.
Paying for ADA seats that are very limited compared to all the general
seats.
Yeah. And they're twice as much. And able-bodied people are allowed to pay for those seats and sit there.
Right.
When, okay, I've gone to games.
Yep.
To get accommodated seats, like maybe I got gift the tickets, right? And I'll go to exchange the tickets.
Right.
And now there's no ADA seats available. So it's like, hello, like, does everyone sitting in an ADA seat or space need that?
Right.
Like physically?
Right.
No. 100% of the time, or 99.99% of the time, probably no.
Right.
So, hello.
Well, then we're going to go into the handicap placard. We're not going to go down this rabbit hole, but yeah. Well, what do we view as a disability, right? Which is the disability community. That's a whole nother thing too. It's so diverse, right? It's such a big community. But yeah, it's like weddings and funerals. They know you got to have it, so they mark up the price.
Right, exactly. So, that's a very interesting thing that I've come across. Going to the parking, the placards, right? Parking spaces, bathroom stalls, movie theater seats. I mean, the list goes on.
Dodger Stadium. Are you listening to this?
Dodgers.
Call Miguel.
Exactly. I'll start pointing out. Yeah. So I want to give speaking of that, just kind of pointing things out. I don't want to reference something else, but it came to mind. And going into more of like school counseling, my profession and what I'm in currently. So I get hired by the principal at Saddleback High School. Shout out to Saddleback, Mr. B, and everybody out there. So when I get, first time on the campus, or one of the first time in the beginning, he gives me like a tour. And which I thought was very appropriate and very cool and kind of brand new, was that like, I was like, there's some things that I can't. Doors are heavier than others, right?
Especially school doors.
Right. So it's like, I can't enter these I'm not trying to have someone like help me every single time.
Right.
So he takes me on a tour of the campus and we start identifying entryways that need to be automated.
Yes.
Because there weren't any, including restrooms.
Right.
So we later identified on the map, like these are entry points where I'm going to request automation for you, like a button or automate the door, right? And so we did that. And I thought that was really cool because it was like,
Yeah.
everywhere I go or everywhere, that you don't see that and you don't
Right.
get someone to be that open to the point where they
Right.
want to help with
Right.
that and
Right.
understand the importance of it, right?
Right.
Not only for me, but for students, not only for students, but families, and,
Right.
and at the same time for everyone to use, right?
Right.
Not only like wheelchair users, but, many people who just need that assistance.
Absolutely.
So, that was compared to other times where I've gone to campuses or gone to places
Mhm.
and there's no type of like welcoming or like take the time to
Yep.
do this with you,
Yep.
right? So
Yep.
we did that, and then eventually all those doors were automated,
Cool.
so I can get in and out fairly easy.
Super cool.
So it feels good and welcoming to provide that space, that
Right.
culture, that environment
Right.
where the inclusion is there.
Yep.
Right. And you are being heard.
Right.
Right.
Well, it just takes one person sometimes. I mean, like it really can be that simple. One person to give a crap.
Right.
And somebody who has privilege and power, and somebody to go, you know what, this is important. And sometimes it just takes a phone call
Yeah.
for somebody.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, and that's what happened. So that kind of came to mind, just thinking about accessibility,
Mhm.
thinking about like having that representation on a campus.
Yep.
And then there's times where I get to school. So now I got a new truck. I don't know if you've heard,
Oh.
but I got a kind of similar to House, or almost
yes.
identical to
Yes.
House.
Yeah.
So I first pull up to work, right, in this truck, and it's interesting because, and then I see this door just come out.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like a, what is that movie called?
Transformers.
Transformers.
Yeah,
There you go.
Transformers.
Yeah.
That's what I tell people. It's like my own Transformer,
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there's people stop or like, they're just like, and then I go, and it goes all the way down.
Yeah.
And I'm just, just doing my thing.
Yeah.
And people stop, they take photos, they ask questions, they want to ride,
Yeah.
So students see that. So that's exactly what I'm okay with putting myself out there, the visibility part.
Yeah.
Obviously being in a position where I can have that privilege to drive and do these things, right? So I'm okay with using my story, myself, and bringing that representation out to the masses, right? And kind of show people what the norms or the new norms
The new
are,
norms.
right?
Yeah.
So, and it's interesting. I love seeing people just stare because it's like, I hope the awareness is there, right?
Yeah. Well, it's a major impact.
Right.
It's a major impact. It's like, holy cow, I didn't even know this option existed.
Exactly.
Right. But that's the nice part about the modern era, which is once again sad that we're behind the times, is because I tell my clients all the time, technology and what we can do with tech now. Right. And what we can build and create and invent is going to be unbelievable for the modern version of what we see as accessibility.
Right.
And even abilities. Shout out to that company as well. Do you follow him on Instagram?
Who is it?
So, oh gosh, I think his first name's Mark, but I remember the company name. Anyways, he has like a 3D printer and he's a quadriplegic himself. And so he was like just fed up with like things not being accessible. So he started 3D printing little gadgets to like be able to do like the most basic things. So he he 3D printed like this thing so he could hold his coffee mug and roll out to his backyard. He 3D printed certain handles to allow clients to have certain grips on things. Wow. Another one to hold a kettlebell so he could do like core twist.
I haven't seen that.
Oh, you need to follow him on Instagram. He's awesome. But he's just 3D printing these things at home. But a few of my clients, I've shown them like, hey, have you checked out? Because they're like, oh, well, I can't open this door. I can't do this thing. And I'm like, have you seen what he's printing? And he's just doing this in his house with a 3D printer. It's kind of crazy, right? Like we couldn't have said that in the 90s, So exactly. I think like the world's your oyster at this point, right? Absolutely. It's just trying to get more of it out there, more people in chairs inspired to start businesses and keep on requesting and making requests because we have the resources to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a matter of taking action and being okay with that. Because I think that's like step one, kind of like acceptance and being okay with being comfortable in your own skin.
Right.
And then, just taking action after that.
Yep.
I would like to reference another post of yours that caught my attention. It was one of the recent ones. Wait, right there. Stop there. No, which one is it? Scroll down. What was that bottom left one? Yeah, that one. So it says, what if I told you feeling like a burden is not about how others feel about you, but the result of a defense mechanism of suppressing your own emotional needs to avoid abandonment by others? I thought this was very interesting, by the way. Can you expand on this as far as like what made you post this or your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So, let me be clear. It's not just for the disabilities community that people at large feel burdensome. And actually, the feeling of burdensome is one of the top 5 red flags for suicidality or suicide ideation. So it's males number 1 category, hopelessness, burdensome. When those key words start to come up in conversation with my clients, you start to kind of like hold a red flag and start listening for, are they having some sort of suicide ideation because of this? A lot of people have probably felt like a burden at some point in their life, but specifically the disability community.
Right.
And so I would say probably every single one of my clients has at one point identified that they feel like a burden. And so much of the focus is on, rightfully so, the new stress and, dare I say, strain. I don't know. It depends on the caregiver, but stress and strain on their loved ones and the amount of help they need, especially in the first couple of years of a spinal cord injury. And so people start to go, it's a slippery slope to feel like a burden because already they're feeling bad about themselves and they're already thinking about all the things that they can't do.
Right.
And then they start to see, their loved ones are having to get up really early in the morning with them, starting to go through this whole morning routine, which sometimes could take 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 hours to get them ready in the morning. The labor of picking them up, transferring them, And so
all the things people don't see.
All the things people don't see. I tell people, I'm like, that person in a chair showing up to class.
Yeah.
You have no idea how much energy it took for them to show up here today.
Wow. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I can talk about that.
Yeah.
No, yeah, but you're absolutely right. Like that was one of the things going back to school. Right. For me, again, talking about my experience, like questions are like, for me going anywhere, I'm already trying to get answers to questions before I even get there.
Right.
Is it on, like, are there hills? Are there cracks?
Life of a wheelchair.
Bathroom.
Right.
How far? All these different questions, right?
Right.
And sometimes you don't get to ask those questions or get the answers until you get there.
Right.
And so for me, like, going back to school was like, got accepted to UC Santa Barbara before my injury, but when I was injured, that all changed.
Yeah.
And it was more of like, I remember thinking that, I can't go back to school. I can't have a girlfriend. I can't do this. I can't do that, right? All those thoughts. And then finally I'm going to go back to school, community college, right? Let me just try it out. Like, how am I going to write? How am I going to carry things? How am I going to, do these things that I felt like I couldn't do? Right. And then you get to school and you find out they have the DSBS, where you get resources there, right? They can provide you with like a note taker and all these priorities, all these different resources, right? And I've always been that person like, well, let me try it first. Yeah. Like maybe I don't need that, or I want to try this, or I want to do better at this. Like, there's still that like, I don't want to say stubbornness, but you want to try things out to see if you can do it for yourself. Right. Absolutely. Right. So I was like, let me take my own notes. And then I remember getting pens or finding out what pen or pencil are easy for me to use. Yeah. And then I was like, I couldn't write, like what? I could write. So I figured that out. So I just started doing that. Take one class at a time. I would get one class and kind of check it out. Already kind of intimidating because I go in there in a chair and all these desks and like just kind of, I don't know what to expect. Right. Navigating campus, getting from the library to the class. Right. Like I don't have anybody there with me because sometimes I have my brother there because he was also taking classes, so he can help me. Yeah. But then I was like, man, it's hard to I had a manual wheelchair. So I was like pushing myself across campus.
Yeah.
And then it was very difficult at the time. And over time, I was able to do it, but I wouldn't have been able to do that unless I tried. Right. So it's like doing all these things, putting yourself in that position to figure it out, to experience it, to learn what you may need help with and what you don't need help with, to learn that you maybe can write this entire time and you're not trying. You know, so really experimenting, really being okay with failing, not being able to do it and try it again.
You are preaching to one of the things I think actually maybe even some of my clients get annoyed with me, but I say exposure. You need to get out of your house. You need to go out. You need to go see the things that you're capable of doing, because with the topic of burdensome, when you start to realize that you are capable of more or maybe different things, you know, you have now different strengths than maybe you did before as a, you know, somebody with an able body, that then the burdensome becomes less, because then you're like, oh, wait, I can take some heat off of my mom and dad or my brother or sister or my spouse, because now I can go and do this thing on my own. And then you go, okay, I'm not as, you know, I'm not as burdensome. Like I have something to contribute. And exposure. Number one advice for anybody who's newly injured. You just got, like, you have to put yourself out there. You have to.
There's no way around that.
No.
You know, there's no way around that. And, you know, again, it's going back to like being comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? In the beginning, it's completely discomfort, no comfortness at all in it. But once you start doing it, you start learning about yourself and you start figuring things out and you start adapting and you start, you know, meeting people and you start being okay with asking for help or being okay with, you know, it's okay to not be okay, but at the same time, you got to experience, right? You know, you don't really know until you try. And then you start realizing like, okay, I can do this. Like, what's the next thing that I want to try?
We'll talk about a self-esteem booster. I mean, it's easy peasy as an able body to go and do these things, but you're not only going back to school or being a school counselor, you are doing that all in a chair. You know, because I even talked to a couple of clients. I was referencing you one time. I had a couple of clients who are now exploring, like, what would I actually go and do? And I'm like, well, I know somebody who was a school counselor. And they're like, yeah, but there's like papers and like, I can't touch paper, or like, you know, they start to go check down the list of like a school counselor desk. And I'm like, well, you can. It just, it looks different, right? But once again, you don't know what you're capable of till you get out there. But thinking about, you know, you're running a foundation, you're a school counselor, you went back to school, you basically rebuilt your life, but even in a bigger, more like badass way, right? It's kind of crazy. So it's something, one, to admire, but two, it's to show that like ableism isn't everything. That like, as long as you have your spirit and yourself and your passion and your drives and your values, that really the able-bodied part doesn't have to be a part of the equation. Although would it make some things easier? Absolutely. Of course. You know what I mean? Like there's like, I'm not trying to like pump up, you know, having a disability and, you know, downgrading that it's hard.
And I think that's, you know, I'm glad you brought that up too, because it's like in the beginning, it's like, or maybe throughout, I don't know, there's times where it's like, don't help me, let me figure it out. You know, I'm going to do it. Like it's time, and that's fine. Like, you know, I think able-bodied people should ask people with disabilities if they want help before they help them.
You're bringing up a kind of intense topic right now.
Very intense.
Because we're talking about getting out of the car.
Exactly. Oh my God.
Sorry, I don't mean to.
No, you're fine. So just in general, there's a lot of things that's like, let me do it on my own. You hear that a lot, or some forms of that. For example, getting in and out of a car, you know, transferring in a car, all the steps that are required to get in and to get out. And that include using a sliding board, if that's something that you use, breaking down your chair, having people help you in and out, like all the technique, all those steps Like that's a process.
Yep.
And it takes time and it
Yep.
takes patience and,
Yep.
and it requires some form of strength along with technique to do these things and to be able to get it down
Right.
in a way where you want to get it down. Right. But to get through that, you're going to need some help,
Yep.
you know, and you have to go through that over and over and over.
Mhm.
And that's like what a lot of things that we overcome and eventually can do independently.
Yes.
There is help involved.
Yes.
And my point of the conversation or the main point of what I'm saying is it's okay to ask for help.
Yeah.
And I'm talking to like my wheelchair user friends out there, you know, or anyone with a disability that can relate, like, or anyone in general.
Right.
Like, it's okay to ask for help. That's a form of courage.
Right.
That's a strength.
Right.
Everyone needs help.
Yep.
Able-bodied or not.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody needs help. There's no one person who just does everything on their own
Yeah.
without having some type of people in their corner who do things for them.
Right.
You know, even if you want to think of like a celebrity or famous or rich person,
Right.
they have so much help.
So,
You know, like managing all these different things. So it's okay to ask for help. There's
absolutely.
nothing wrong with that.
No, absolutely.
And that was one thing I think early on in injury, like that whole stage, the earlier stage where we kind of don't want that because we're fighting so much, you know.
Yeah, but it's not black or white, it's gray.
Right, yeah.
You can live in a world in which you do the majority of the things on your own, but then sometimes need help, or do the
Correct.
majority of things with help and then some things on your own. And guess what? Especially with this injury, and as you have more exposure, you start to get better and a little bit more savvy at things.
Right.
And so then the tide starts to shift. You have a
Right.
lot of help heavy in the front. And then
Right.
usually with time and experience, you
Right.
have less help towards the back.
Exactly.
And all can exist at the same time. Like you don't have to, it doesn't have to be all or nothing.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, for example, myself, right? I get help in the morning with like, there's some things that I can improve on.
Yeah.
And if I spend more time working on that,
Yeah.
I will improve on that.
Right.
And I know what those are.
Right.
You know, like, for example, maybe like certain, like dressing like my lower extremities.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Like improving that.
Right.
Or, you know, transferring a higher level or lower level. Like
Right.
I could transfer, but I kind of suck at higher and lower
Yeah.
levels, but things that are leveled,
Yes.
it's
Fine.
easier,
Right.
you know? So it's like, I see what I can improve on and I see kind of the support that I have and I'm very grateful for that support.
Right.
So by having that, you know, doing everything else on my own,
Right.
it's like, whereas beforehand where I thought I needed help with everything
Right.
and I never put myself out there or tried to improve in those areas,
Right.
then I would kind of be in that same situation. But if
Right.
I'm putting myself out there, trying new things, then you eventually get to a point where it's like you realize you get stronger
Yep.
and you can do so much more after that.
Yep.
You know, but it goes back to the very beginning, like
Right.
just being okay, accepting of yourself,
Right.
taking steps to actually try things out, and then you
Right.
get to reflect and do it again and you get stronger. And then
Yeah.
you're just like, damn, like what?
Yep.
And you just like, let's do it. What's next?
Yep.
So it's not that I don't, and I'm just talking for myself,
Right.
but a lot of people are like, man, you're doing so much.
Yeah.
You know, it's awesome. I'm like, yeah, it's awesome. I am doing a lot,
Yeah.
you know, but I have a routine. I have a system. I have a structure.
Right.
There are people, you know, family and family friends who are awesome themselves and supportive of me. And
Right.
so it's a combination
Yep.
of a lot of things that a lot of people don't see or think about.
Yep.
And then when they hear about it, they're like, oh, what? You know, and it's like, yeah, like there's a lot involved. But at the same time, you know, it's kind of what I want, you know, what I wanted as far as like my career and like things in place. So
Well, if it's worth it, you'll do it. And I tell my clients a lot too, that I'm like, you, in your first, especially the first, maybe first 5 years of your injury, you have to take into consideration that you and what you're doing is equivalent to a professional athlete, but you are now involved in a sport that you never wanted to be a part of.
Right. Yeah,
because of the amount of time and training and dedication and waking up when you don't want to and having to go back and do it all over again. And when everybody's out, just able-bodying it at a bar somewhere, you're back home trying to work out how to get in and out of your bed. Like the stuff that people with professional athletes, people don't see the grind behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And that is, I mean, and I use that metaphor as like treating yourself with respect that way, because like you're putting in the work, like you're grinding on something that you didn't ask to do and to be a part of. But that's like what you're talking about, the level of work it can take, but also too, there's no pressure to have it all figured out because once again, time and experience is just going to naturally allow you to fall into things, or you're just going to bump into something, go, oh, wow, I did that. Like I had no idea I could do that. And you didn't train or practice for it at all. Or if there's something that you're like, you got a busy life, you're like, this transferring up and down, you're like, I don't got time to train for this. So it's like, go and get it. And that's when adaptive equipment comes into play. It's like, okay, what do I need to help me get over the hump? Oh, I looked at this person's website. They're doing this thing. I'm going to purchase and buy that thing. And now that's done and taken care of. That's off my plate. Right. It doesn't, once again, there's no pressure for new people who are newly injured to have it all figured out. And once again, time is your friend. Exposure is your friend. And also to treat yourself with respect. What you are doing is one of the hardest things that a human can do. And so like, there's a level of respect with that.
Yeah,
it's like,
absolutely. Yeah. And to like add to that too, for, individuals who are newly injured, one great thing to do is like connect with the disability community.
Absolutely.
Meet people, talk to people, watch videos, research, get involved.
So can I interrupt and ask you something real quick?
Yeah, go for it.
Because this is something I find very common with, let's throw some stats out there. The high majority of people with spinal cord injury happen to be male, right? There's more men who have spinal cord injuries because they're risk takers or whatever stereotypes you want to put in. But so the majority of my clients are male, but a lot of my male clients, I would say my female clients are a little bit more open, but initially this is a very common pattern. Some of them feel guilty about it. So I wanted to bring it up and see if you could shed some light, but they kind of are like, I don't want to identify with the disability community. Cause I start promoting like, hey, like there's this whole, like across the street at the Perfect Step, there's this whole database of research from these people who have been living it before you. You should go and reach out to them. And it's still part of the grieving process. I found it's like the rejection of like, I don't want to accept that this happened to me. Yeah. And so if I go in and I start talking to people from the community, then that means essentially that I've accepted life as this way. And I'm not ready for that. So I was just curious if you ever had a stage like that or all, because there's quite a big handful of my male clients who go through these stages of kind of like wanting to reject the injury or reject the prospect that my life could look like this for forever.
I mean, I think that's people are just not honest with themselves. Because at the end of the day, it's like, it's not a switch you can turn on and off, right? When you wake up, I'm talking to specifically people who are not accepting of it. But at the same time, a general message is it's not something that we can turn on and off. And the longer that we are unaccepting of who we are and the life we live and the reality of what we're living in, we're going to remain in this bubble and feel trapped for however long we continue to have that mindset about ourselves. The faster you reach out or connect with people in the disability community, the faster and easier and more productive your recovery will be. Because going back to this not being able to do things on our own, especially with, as a person with a disability, spinal cord injury, wheelchair user, it's like remove the ego, right? Especially that male ego for my male friends out there. Like
it's a hard thing to do, Miguel.
You'd be surprised how easy it is, but I get it, but at the end of the day, we're not going to be able to live that life that we want until we, number one, are accepting of ourselves. Yeah. We're aware of it. We're accepting of it. And then we start taking that action. But I don't think I've had the experience of like, I don't want to identify. Yeah. It's more of like, I don't know, and I think that's kind of what these male clients are kind of, they're asking the wrong question or they're not reaching out. They don't know how to express it. It's like, well, if they were exposed, to a lot of these resources in the community, even if they didn't willingly put themselves out there, but they were just, drove by or went through this, big hall with all these resources and they seen all of that, that would change them, right? Yeah. Because it's like, dude, there's so many resources out there. There's so much opportunity to live a fulfilling life, whether it be in sports, careers, or, all these things that we're doing, opening our own business. Like we can still do so many things.
But you can speak to this. So like, look, you were an athlete in high school. You played, is it football, I believe?
In high school, I played football, but I played basketball and baseball.
What was your love? Football.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. You played football. And imagine your little high school self playing football. And then one day you're injured, cramming timelines together. You're injured and you can't play football anymore. That's the grief process I'm talking about. Because you can live a full life, but I think so many people are stuck on the fact that there are actually literal things that you can never do again.
Yeah.
What's the process for that?
That's interesting because even now, like to this day, I think there will always be that moment of reflection when you think back on those days. Yeah. Like that will always be there.
Yeah.
And I'm speaking for myself, but that will be there. For example, me being a quarterback, right? Throwing a football 50 yards, right? That's something so it's like, I kind of think of this example. So I ended up coaching high school football after my injury.
Yes, I remember that.
Right. Yeah. So that's something it's like, you're a football coach? Yeah. Like, yeah. Yeah. So it's like, if I can't play football, then I'm going to do the next best thing.
Right.
And that's going to be coaching football. Right. Right. I'm still doing what I've been around and been involved in before my injury. So if I can't be a player on the field in the actual American football game, then I'm going to be on that field in another capacity, and as a coach. Right. So it's a matter of making that shift. And being aware of like accepting again of like, okay, I'm not going to throw this football as far as I used to throw it. Yeah. Does that mean I can never think about that? It's like you don't forget, but you kind of forgive yourself. Yeah. And you move on. Yeah. And it's okay to still think about those times because I think we'll naturally have that memory and have something remind us of that. Right. But at the end of the day, what's the next best option for you?
Yeah. Right. Well, it's a super positive, hopeful kind of like push through outlook. And I also think this is where this community relates to the professional athlete realm again, because think about how many professional athletes have gotten injured or had to retire before their time, or even like a Peyton Manning. And he's like still doing as much football things as he can, right? Because that's becomes your identity as a person. And now all of a sudden you've lost, like that is gone. That is gone. And having to rebuild from scratch who you are, what you love, even though you can't do the thing that you actually love. And so now I have to live another life without that thing, or I have to associate with it in a different way that I'm accustomed to. It's an identity crisis. And you see professional athletes go through that after retirement. They struggle.
And there's no lie either saying that that's not a difficult thing. Right. That it's not just of a grieving process. We have to grieve over that. It's not something that won't be there. It's not just something you get over. Right. Like not, saying that's not that, because it is that. But at the end of the day, how long are you going to stay there in that space? Yeah. Right. And I think that kind of goes back to like the mental health part, which is good that if clients are sharing that with you, they're talking to you about it. Absolutely. Because if not, they're at home or wherever, not processing that in some kind of way. But it's key. Talk about it, process it, seek help, professional help to have that conversation. Right. But at the same time, what actions are you taking to find that new love? Because life ain't over, There's so much to live for. So create that new bond with something that's the next level or the next thing. Yep. Like I said, I can't play football. I'm gonna do the next best thing, and that's gonna coach football. Right. So I'm still doing it, Right. So that would kind of be my complicated response to
Well, it is complicated. I don't think most people, until you can either observe it or witness it or actually go through it yourself, understand the complexities of the dynamics that happen physically and mentally after you acquire a spinal cord injury.
Right.
It is complex. Yes. And once again, talking about mental health needing improvement, this is one of the things that Hal Hargrave harps on. It's one of the things I've been harping on for years. The fact that we are not addressing mental health in the way that it should be addressed in hospitals right after somebody gets injured is a big problem. And I spoke recently to a local hospital who is well known for their spinal cord injury recovery and said, hey, like, what does your mental health? I was hoping to maybe collaborate and say, like, what does your mental health for this population look like? Because I can tell you, I've listened to thousands of hours of the struggle and I have some ideas,
Right.
And of course, there's the bureaucracy, there's funding and like all the stuff. They have neuropsychologists or psychologists on staff, but they're only if like somebody's in crisis, right? But they basically said, look, like, initially up front, these people are being hammered with rehab and it's just so exhausting in the hospital. They don't need it's just it's too much. We don't need nothing. And I'm like, I hear you, like rehab in the hospital, and you can speak to this, is intense.
Yeah, sure.
But even if we're like just dropping like little nuggets to say, hey, you need to take your mental health into consideration too. So when you leave here, it's probably a really good idea. You just lost your whole identity,
right?
Your sense of self,
right?
And it has been fractured into 1,000 pieces. So if we want you to be a well-functioning human who we're expecting to go and get a job eventually and be a part of society, you probably should maybe, not everybody has to. I want to highlight that people are super resilient and not everybody needs a therapist, right? But understandably, the majority of people probably could use somebody to help them guide through kind of taking the fractured pieces of themselves and piecing it back together so that then they can quicker get back into society and get back into a job and a career.
Right, that's true.
And
very true.
Yeah, it's just, it's the broken part of our mental health and the things we need to improve on.
Right. And I think that's awesome that you actually took the time to go to like a facility or a hospital to see what's up and kind of recognize the gaps or what's missing. And because you're right, like when I was injured, I was at Rancho Los Amigos. I was inpatient there.
They're wonderful.
Yeah, they're awesome. They're a state-of-the-art facility, very well known.
Yep.
They've
got a great adaptive sports program.
Great, everything. So they do an excellent job at, helping you transition to this new life, right? But there was no mental health piece, right? None of that really. What I thought was interesting too, was like the sex talk, and I was like, oh, what?
I was hoping you were going to bring that up.
It was like, oh, okay, hello. So
you're saying they did the sex talk?
They did very briefly.
Yeah, at least they did something.
So it was like, you can't have sexual intimacy with your partner or whatever, that's still a possibility. So they show you like video, they talk about, presentation.
It's like being in the 6th grade again and going through like sex ed.
It literally is, just like that. And you're just like, what? Okay. Like they're very graphic videos.
Great.
I'm sure you. Yeah.
Good.
So it's like, okay, cool. And they show you from different levels of spinal cord injury.
I think so. On my website, themedicaltherapist.com, if you go to my resources, I think probably the video they're showing you, but I have put a link to this video to show all the different sex positions for different levels of injury.
Can we pull that? Can you pull the website up? I want to show a visual. Yeah.
There's no PG happening to this podcast.
No.
Okay, if you go to my resources.
I do like the representation. I want to point that out, though.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's one thing that you mentioned or we discussed where it's just you have someone with a disability on your website.
This is the majority of my clients.
Right.
And I'm super proud to be making sure that they are planted all over the place.
And then you talked about also how like inspiring other therapists to serve the disability community or something along those lines,
I
right?
think it would be maybe a long-term goal to mentor up some therapists to work with the very specific niche I work with, because it does require a level of exposure to a diverse population of disabilities. Like I told you, my clients roll in, they're like, I can't drive. And I'm like, no, yes, you can, right? But I know that because I've had so much exposure. And so I think if they had gone into another therapist's office who never had exposure, they would never think to tell that quadriplegic that they could drive.
Very true.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Yeah.
So if you go to resources and click on resources, I got a lot of cool links on there, but if you go all the way down on the right, go back up. Sex positions after spinal cord injury.
There we go.
Yeah,
hello. Pull that up. So many positions.
Is this it?
Yes. Yes. This is it here.
It's really good.
It is.
So
very good.
The video just is right there. It's 5 minutes. They show you male, female, high level injury, low level injury, in the chair, out of the chair, different adaptive equipment, different adaptive toys that you can use. I'm
going to have to reference this again. Reference it again.
Yeah.
You said there was a graphic too, or is it just the video you have?
It's just the video. And it's 5 minutes long, and it, it does the whole thing. But yes, men and women, you can have a very active, fulfilling sex life with your partner, but we got to get out of the heterosexual normative expression of what sex looks like.
Right.
And now you can have it. See, we could potentially dive deep into this, but this is up to you.
We can. I mean, we have time. Let's do it.
I think, once again, for me, I tell my clients, like, the kink community is like our biggest friend, because the kink community really promotes that, like, it's not just the tip of the penis or the vagina that is the source of pleasure. It's one of them.
Right.
But our whole body is a source of pleasure. And by the way, when I became a therapist, I did not intend to be like a disability sex therapy expert, but I have to. No, I know. Well, I should have thought a little bit smarter, because it comes up in my office rightfully so.
Oh yeah,
all the time. So now I've had to become this, like, inverted, like, I talk about sex and disability in my office all the time. And I am using, and this is what's so powerful about the collective knowledge of the disability community, is that not only did I have experience with clients who I was working with physically, who would, we get to know each other. They tell me about their partners and then, their sex life. So I have all that information coming into being a therapist. But now I have clients who were working out different sexual function problems, or like to know things as like, oh gosh, like if Viagra isn't working for you, did you know that sometimes just the brand of Viagra doesn't work with your system? So sometimes your urologist can just prescribe you a different brand, and that's the problem. Or there's these different toys, or these different pumps, or there's a shot, or there's like the injection, there's all of these things. And so, and a lot of people, once again, coming out of a hospital, they know nothing about any of that. And
there's also like, being stimulated in areas where you actually have sensation.
Okay. Yes. So yes. Okay. So this is so once again, this is where we all have to just become part of the kink community. And we need to get out of the heterosexual normative sexual experience, although you still can have penis, vagina penetration sex if you would like to. But there are different ways, if that's a difficult task for you, to have pleasurable sex outside of that. But so, there's secondary sex characteristics. So like nipples, behind the ears, behind the legs, the neck. So that's just our normal. So so if your level of injury is, below the neck, or maybe right around the neck, and neck could be a really tender place. But especially with a spinal cord injury, the way that your nervous system ends up kind of playing out based off of the way the level of injury works, it can cause your sensation to be different in different areas. And it can also cause an heightened sensation, So I've had clients who talked about how like the swell of their neck here is so sensitive that like if you use like feather toys or like kiss or whatever on their neck, that could give them an orgasm like experience because their nervous system's firing.
Right, exactly.
But that happens with able bodies too. Once again, the kink community are professionals at exposing people to being able to have pleasurable experiences that once again doesn't always require the penis and the vagina.
Right, exactly.
And so we all are capable of this before a spinal cord injury, but specifically some of the strengths for somebody in a sexual experience after spinal cord injury is really starting to get to know your body and understand where did your sensations kind of line up. So some people are like, I can't feel anything below here, but if you touch behind here, like that is hypersensitive. Or I have clients who are disjointed. They're like, oh, I can feel like this half of my body or lightness of touch, but this half of my body I can't. So it's really just getting welcoming your body, being willing to, experiment and exposed to it. And so the sky's the limit. You just, once again, we have to get out of our box that we're stuck in and be able to be a little bit more open-minded to using the whole body as a pleasure vessel.
So are your clients expressing difficulty with exploring that, or they just don't know, or a little bit of everything?
So let's talk about some of the gender or sex pros and cons. So a female born person, sex is a little bit less complicated, right? We don't have to worry about getting an erection with a spinal cord injury. So the majority of my clients are males. And so obviously an erection is the center of all sexual experiences for men. And so this is a very big concern. So it varies. It varies from like, I've had clients who've come in and they're like, oh, well, why would I even date again? Because I have nothing to offer my future partner. I can't have sex. So like that basic, because they didn't get sex, ed in the hospital, which is common. And so I go, so then I bust out the manual, flap it up, and I'm like, well, let me help you. There actually are all these options. You need to go talk to your doctor, specifically your neurologist, and, yada, yada, yada. But then sometimes it's like, okay, I can get an erection, but it doesn't last long. And then it's like, okay, well, then once again, we bust out the, go talk to your doctor. You have more options. And then it's like, okay, well, I am able to have, penis vagina penetration, but I don't feel like I don't have the sensation there, but it's pleasurable for my partner. So I just do it, but I'm basically kind of just like a body there. And so I go, okay, well, once again, this is where we need to start involving the other parts of your body in conjunction, because we have to remember with the spinal cord injury, the penis tip is still getting neurofeedback. It's just not making it past the injury site up to your brain to then communicate to you that pleasure is happening. So your body is still experiencing the pleasure. You're just not getting the signals. And so we have to go to those other parts so that we can give you the best potential for having a full sexual experience. So I have clients, female clients who have said that they have better orgasms since their spinal cord injury or will have multiple orgasms because of how sensitive and like, testy their nervous system, like somebody who's super spastic, right? Their nervous system's always excited. So they talk about having multiple orgasms. They're like, my sex life is better since I've had a spinal cord injury. But then I'll have males that will say, I'll able to achieve an erection. I'll have penis vagina penetration. But when my body orgasms, I don't experience it from my penis. I experience like it shoots through the rest of my, like it comes out through different parts of my body. So I feel the orgasm in my chest, or I feel it down my arms. And so, but that's
back to the sensation, right?
Right. Yep. Going back to the sensation, or just, however, I mean, spinal cord injuries are like a fingerprint. No two are alike. So it pans out different for everybody.
And that kind of goes into like the exploration piece. Right? Because then you start experimenting. Having the sensation, experimenting on different parts of the body. And that's totally fine. I mean, like you mentioned, like we all have different, we all can explore that, regardless of our abilities. But particular for men, we can still get it on.
Yes, you can.
And so, it's a matter of exploring, experimenting. And then you start realizing like, okay, I can't have a family, or, you can't do this, and you still can have a sexual, have sexual intimacy with your partner.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think once again, and we're talking about gender roles that are subscribed to us, right? So males in particular, look, I'm an identified feminist, but as an identified feminist, I also recognize and realize and also want to respond to the gender roles that are placed on men that are really not helpful. Right. Just like we have gender roles that are placed on us as women that are really not helpful. Correct. And I'm being very general with that statement. But with men specifically, especially after they get injured, the most common thing, the classic things come up like, oh, well, I'll never be able to play catch with my son. And I'm like, well, do you even like baseball? They're like, no, I play piano. And I'm like, okay, then why are we even working? But like, it's such an American dream male thing to do is like to play like, oh, to be a man, I have to play catch with my son, or like I have to protect my family. So who's going to protect the house when an intruder comes in? Or, and then men roles during sex. Well, like, how am I going to be able to hold my person during sex? And once again, just like you talking about just going out and living your life in the bedroom, your world's your oyster. You should have to be willing to go and get exposure, to experiment, to have an open mind, and be adaptive. But there are some male stereotypes, especially about being a man in the bedroom, that like,
a lot of them.
Yeah. Well, do you want to bring some up?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like not only in the bedroom. Yeah, we can talk about.
I'm putting you on the spot.
I'm sorry. No, it's all good. I mean, there's always, as a man, you want to have your partner, your female partner, in my case, heterosexual. So I'm talking about that.
Yeah.
You want to be in certain positions.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
You want to be in control. You want to go from one thing to the other. You want to, that's like
able to feel dominant.
Right. Exactly. Right. To feel dominant. You're going to be in those positions and have that role and dominate the sex.
Right.
And that's kind of that male ego and male normacy that we're so used to.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it's like, there's so many, like for now, right? It's like when you have that relationship with your partner and you're both comfortable in exploring, that's like, that's where it's at, because it's like, you can do so many other things rather than what you're used to. Like there's so much more that can go on in the bedroom that people don't really think about.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I have two additions to what you're saying. I also think too that men identify their masculinity with their physicalness, right? Exactly. And so they're like, if I can't pick up my woman or whatever, be dominant in the physical way, that then that's like, oh, I can't be masculine in bed. It's like, oh no, you can be dominant in bed. There's other ways to be dominant in the bedroom, but you have to get away from the ableism, get away from the body. You can be dominant through your words. You can be dominant through your directions. You can be dominant in laying the landscape about what you're going to be doing or not doing, right? Like there are ways to be masculine in the bedroom.
It's that physical piece that men get so caught up in.
Yes.
And it's like, there's way more than that.
Yes.
Like you mentioned the words, setting the stage, directions, all of that is like huge. Right. So we're so used to like picking up or different positions, transitions, all these different things that we're so caught up on and get lost in to the point where we forget on just how else we can make this happen. Right.
Right. Well, I'm going to make an argument for why maybe having sex with somebody in a wheelchair is a great experience because, okay, are you ready? Because, with somebody who needs a more expansive view of sex, we get to break away the monotony of just what we know sex to be. Once again, penis, vagina, penetration, right? Like, and people just like, they don't even have to think about it. They just like do it, right? Where like, when you have to go outside the box, once again, this is why the kink community, all these things are so positive for the disability community, is that you start to really take the person as a whole being into an account. Yes. It's not just like, oh, biologically, like this is what we're doing, right? Yeah. It's like, oh no, how can I pleasure and how and what? And we have to start communicating. We have to start breaking down all of these things, right? And so I believe or I'm advocating, or I advocate to my clients that I think actually, despite your physical limitations, your sex experience could be even better, because now you're being forced to communicate. You're being forced to be vulnerable. You're being forced to explore the whole body. You're being forced to talk to your partner about what they like and what you like. And there's so many men who are not taught to take their partner into consideration.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? And then also to advocate for themselves outside of what like men do in the bedroom, because maybe you like something other than maybe what is like the heterosexual male way of doing things.
Exactly.
And so I actually think the disability conversation brings up a lot of positivities of having a really beautiful, really holistic, well-rounded sex life.
And then, like going back, and you can implement toys.
Oh, absolutely.
And that'll heighten the experience. So, yeah, I actually agree with what you said.
See, you're like, see, ladies, are you listening?
Yeah, exactly. So, I think that's a great point. Very important that men, you can still get it on in the bedroom.
Yes.
You know?
Preach.
Get it on like Donkey Kong, you know what I mean? But no, I think it's important that we don't, kind of, at least males, don't steer away from the sex conversation or exploration.
Yes.
I think that's very, very important. It's still there, and going back to different ways to experience that and have an orgasm or an erection and so many different ways that we can still dominate or be a part of that experience.
Or be submissive. Maybe,
or submissive.
I mean, everybody's got their own, they got their own vanilla Ben and Jerry's in the bedroom.
And then I like how you brought up the kink community and how they're very positive, and that aligns with the disability community in so many ways.
Yes. So, well, and they're body positive too, because that's another thing, right? Like when I'm unclothed and like I don't get to maybe do squats like I used to, so my legs look different, I feel less sexy. And it's like, no, you have a lot to offer, but you have to see that for your, like you have to see that in your body and for this is dementia issues, For myself, and the kink community is also very much sex positive, but they're also body positive, gender fluidity positive. Like they are just like all encompassing, welcoming. And I think we can learn a lot from them. Even just the ableism, heterosexual community, we have a lot to learn from these other communities.
I want to kind of go into, because you're obviously very involved in your practice. You're still a board member in the Be Perfect Foundation. And then this, your family, regular family as well. So very active. Are there times like where you, like how do you keep yourself motivated or to like continue to do what you do? And then going into that on top of it, I want to incorporate the topic of burnout, right? So that's something that for me, just referencing my experience in this, being someone with a disability and having my routine and my schedule, but also being involved in a lot of the things that I'm involved in, wanting to do so much more and that it's very easy to kind of get caught up in a lot of things. And so a lot of people are like, how do you keep up with what you're doing? Are you comfortable talking about just kind of your experience with staying motivated or, staying motivated and maintaining focus on your goals?
That's actually a hard question for me to answer. I don't have something panned out, and there are a lot of times because, look, I've gone into solo private practice. So it's me, myself, and I, right? I don't have this team of other people that I'm collaborating with on a day-to-day basis. And so I'm the accountant, I'm the therapist, I'm the self-motivator. I'm like, I'm all the things. And so, I think for me, it's really important for me to have time away from my work because I think I get re-energized. I'm more re-energized when I have balance in my life, or when I get to take a step away and then just focus on something else, like my family for a little bit. Even when I take, I've gotten to the point where I realize that I need to take a week off in July and December. Those are now and I take a whole week off. I don't touch work. And just that alone will sometimes re-energize me and then remind me of projects I've been wanting to do and things like that. But also I think, remembering the origins of where I came from, I'm so fortunate that I'm located in the same exact parking lot as the perfect step. So I leave my office and on a lunch break and I walk there and I just circle the room and I see what they're doing.
Nice.
And I see the rehab and where I used to once be. Right. And it reminds me of where I am today, why I'm doing the things that I'm doing. And then just sitting down with people like you, being able to sit and talk with you, with people like Hal Hargrave, and being able to just have these other dreamers around me.
Right.
Because I'm a dreamer. I'm a self-identified dreamer. And people who have big ideas, because just even listening to them and what you're doing and the things that you're doing with life gets me pumped up. Right.
Yeah, right.
But to avoid burnout, my simple answer is, for me personally, I've had to find there needs to be balance, because I am somebody who can be an extremist. Right. So when I latch onto something, I'm like, foot on the gas, and I can be so obsessive about that thing that then like all of a sudden I'm like midway through the project and I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't want to, I'm too exhausted to go further. So I found that I really need to like slow it down and then really make sure, like when I'm at work, I get there at 7:30 a.m. every morning. I leave at 5 p.m. I'm there for 2 to 3 hours before I start my first client. In those 2 to 3 hours, I'm doing all my passion projects, catching up on my notes. I'm handling my fun stuff. I see my clients. And when I leave, I'm done. And so then I go home and then I'm solely focused on my family. And so being able to really kind of like section my life out like that, I think helps bring balance. So I don't have burnout, but it's also recognizing the signs of burnout and then going and taking a vacation. It's like, okay, I woke up this morning, I didn't want to go to work, and that's not a good thing. Right. And so, what do I have coming up and when can I schedule a day off and just take it? Because it's, especially in what you and I do, it's so important that we have our head in the game.
Very, very much important. Because you can easily get caught up in the work, right? You can easily be overwhelmed, and that's not the best thing for us individually and also for the communities and people we support. So at the end of the day, I think one thing I've learned, I've always kind of revisited this conversation, but, saying no more to others and yes more to yourself, because it's always been, there's like that saying, like, you're a yes person, you say yes to everything, right? And I feel like I used to be one of those people, and then you kind of like start off as one of those people, and then you kind of like eventually transition to like understanding why saying no is very important.
So you can do what you do well,
right. And so that's something I think is very, very important. A lot of people don't quite understand that in the beginning of their whole professional career. But, I thought it was really important to bring that up, because it's so easy to get caught up in burnout, especially in the fields that we're in. Yep,
absolutely. Look, we're helping populations that have high needs and high demands from us, and they deserve they deserve our full attention. And so, in America, we push the productivity culture. We don't take mental health days, but I absolutely take mental health days, because my clients are coming to me and I need to give them my 100%. So if I can't, like on days that I literally cannot be 100%, maybe 90%, but like if it starts to sink towards 85, I'm like, I just cancel, because I'm like, they're better off not with I need to come to them and make sure that their time is valuable.
Right, exactly.
Their time is valuable, and I need to be able to show up. So if I can't show up, then they can use their time that we would normally stay together in other ways. I'm going to rest and recharge, and I'm going to come back 100% next week. It's so important for what we do.
Yeah, exactly. And this we're talking a little bit about like lessons we've learned during our experience, and also how we kind of better that. But showing up for our clients or the people we serve in a way where we can be fully there for them, fully present. In the beginning of your career, or any time in general, have you ever experienced like imposter syndrome?
Oh, absolutely. I still do.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, look, I now have this company called The Medical Therapist. Like there's so many times where I've gone back to like, I have a little marketing team that helps me. And shout out to the Thrill Therapist. We have so many plugs in this podcast. Are we getting commission for any of these?
You got listening over there?
But I've gone back to them. I'm like, God, it feels like so much pressure to carry that weight of my name. And the reason why we picked the name is that it started off as my Instagram handle.
I like the name, by the way.
Well, thank you. It's a very clear, like I want my niche to find me. And so I just need in my name to say what I do, right? And who I work with. Right. And that was as clear of a name as we could get to encompass all the different types of people with different medical complications or disabilities. But it does feel like a heavy weight. You know, people are seeking me out and they're like, you're the medical therapist. You have this niche. Like I'm coming to you with this really complicated health condition and whatnot. And so there are times where I sit there and go like, am I really the person? You know, am I really the person? But I look around and there's nobody else.
You are the person.
Well, I have plenty of experience to qualify me, but I think you are not doing enough, or you're doing something wrong if you don't have a little bit of imposter syndrome. Okay. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I brought it up. It's interesting though. It's like, you know, you build these relationships and you're doing the work and you're doing an awesome job and you get a lot of good feedback and people say this and referrals, right? All these different things.
Right.
But at the end of the day, you still kind of like, you know, like question or wonder. And then you leave it there and you kind of get back to it, you know, but yeah, it does kind of pop up every now and then. Especially when there's like so many, obviously you kind of naturally look at other therapists or counselors and you kind of like see how that's going and like, oh, that's awesome, you know, and then, so that's natural. But at the end of the day, it's like we are ourselves, and we have the ability and freedom to kind of create our own identity, right? You know, in our own way, in our own profession. So I think it's really cool because a lot of times I get kids who come and see me, and it's like you build that relationship with them. And I say building relationships out of laughter because my co-counselors, we always laugh about, like, what do we do as counselors? We build relationships, right? So it is funny thinking about that. But, you know, we really do that. And we make that connection, and to be able to see the people that we support, like, do well afterwards. And I think that's so awesome. You know, but yeah, the imposter syndrome is there, but it's kind of like on and off. You know? Well,
if you're not questioning what you're doing, then what the heck are you doing?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think everybody needs to be questioning themselves a little bit more, not in like a negative way, but it's good to be, you know, take a step back and be objective and to look at yourself and what you're doing and to ask questions.
Right.
But yeah, imposter syndrome, it's a thing.
Yeah, it's a real thing. So I'd like to transition to rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
So for those of you who don't know what rapid fire questions are, rapid fire questions are basically a list of questions that Jen has no idea what they are. Okay. I'm just going to throw questions out there. The first thing that comes up, she's going to respond to them. All right.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Are you sure?
Maybe.
All righty. You have no choice. We're going through it. All righty. So here we go. We begin.
Okay.
What is something that most people get wrong about you?
Something that most people get wrong about me. That I have it all together.
They have it all together.
Yeah.
Okay. Fill in a blank. Vulnerability is
strength.
Nice. A snapshot of an everyday moment that gives you true joy.
Being with my family, my daughter, my 2-year-old. Yeah.
Awesome. What's one thing you are deeply grateful for right now?
My health and my family.
Nice.
But my health.
Okay. What advice would you give to someone who is just starting out in your field?
Try everything, work with every population, exposure.
Going back to exposure, huh? Lastly, how can people get a hold of you if they want to connect with me?
You can get a hold of me by going to my website, themedicaltherapist.com, or you can check out what I'm talking about on my Instagram handle, The Medical Therapist.
Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Jenna Hardy-Surina. Jenna, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Miguel. It's so fun.
Your just everything. You are awesome and amazing, and we appreciate you for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Miguel. It's great to be here.
Of course. No, it's awesome. I had a good time.
Yeah.
A good time.
Yep, super.
And we might have to run it back one day. So
I'm down.
Be ready for that.